Coming back again from the last lecture that we had. So in the last lecture, what we really did is we understood what a matrix actually means in relation to a vector space. So when we operate a vector with a matrix, then what exactly we are doing? We are moving the vector from one place to another. So like in this two-dimensional space, we are having some vector, some position. Suppose this is our vector, and then we have a matrix operation on this vector, and this vector perhaps goes here. So what it does is basically it modifies the x1 and the x2 coordinates of the vector, of the parent vector, and yields the final vector, or sometimes also called the child vector. So from the parent we get the child, but with a transformation which is the matrix basically. So by operating with a matrix we get the new vector. So now with this understanding, let us look at a matrix. So this is basically a matrix. So regardless of, like, don't think about a vector at this present, think about only the matrix. So suppose we have uh, let us take an example, 2 1 minus 2 3 4 5 1, maybe this. So this might be some matrix. So what information does this matrix give you? So that is the question. So you can understand that this is, so several information we can gather. The first thing is it is a 5 cross 5 matrix. We can gather the order of the matrix. So order is 5. Then we could take the determinant and see whether the determinant is 0 or not. If the determinant is 0, then it would be a singular matrix or non-invertible matrix. If the determinant is non-zero, it is a non-singular matrix. So whether it is invertible or not, that does not hold us from operating this matrix on a vector. So even if this is not a invertible matrix, even if this matrix is not a invertible matrix, even then we can actually take it and operate it on a vector, any vector, and the vector must be of dimension 5 cross 1. So this is matching with this, only then we can do this product, correct? Now let us dig something a bit deeper into the matrix, and matrix operating on a vector, and see what we are actually getting. So one thing that you can understand, that in the resultant vector will also be in the 5-dimensional space, and the first coordinate of the vector is basically this scaling the first coordinate plus this scaling the second coordinate. So the first row gives us the information of how the different elements or different entries of the parent vector is getting scaled to give rise to the first coordinate of the child vector. So the first row, so row 1 is giving us the information of the scaling which we need to do on the parent vector in order to get the first element. So element 1 or the first coordinate of the child vector. Row 2 gives the same information about the scaling but for the element number 2. Element number 2. Row 3 gives the same information about the scaling of the different coordinates of the parent vector but for the element number 3. So in this way we can know, always we can know how much we have to scale each of the coordinates of the parent vector in order to get the corresponding coordinate of the child vector. So the row gives us that information about that corresponding coordinate or the corresponding element of the child vector. So this is one way of looking at the matrix. Another way of looking at the matrix is also very useful, which is like this. So this thing, this matrix multiplication, when this is happening, you can understand that basically your in each of these rows, if I ask the question a bit differently, if I ask the question, suppose I ask the question like this: what is the contribution of the x1 being the first coordinate of the parent vector, what is the contribution of x1 in each of the rows of the child vector? X1 is having some contribution, x2 is also having some contribution, x3 also having some contribution. I am asking you, what is the contribution of x1 in each of the rows of the child vector? So that contribution, as you can understand, in the first element of the child vector we are having 2x1, in the second minus x1, in the third 1x1, in the fourth 1x1, in the fifth row 2x1. So the contribution of x1 is only this much. Then as in the fifth row, the x2 gets its contribution with this scalar 2x2, x3 gives its contribution with this scalar minus 2x3. So in that manner it happens. So the same question, if I ask for x2, the contribution is basically shown in this particular column. For x1 the contribution is shown in this particular column, for x2 the contribution is shown in this particular column, for x3 this particular column, for x4 this, and for x5 this particular column. The contribution of x5 in each of the rows is shown in this particular column. I hope this is, you have understood this. So what we can write, this vector, which is basically the cumulative contribution of each of these entries x1, x2, x3, x4, x5. So we can now write this as, so this one is very important to understand. Plus x2 plus the third column into x3 plus the fourth column into x4 plus the fifth column into x5. So probably this is not very apparent, straightforward, but you can understand how this has come into being, and you should remember this result. So a matrix multiplied with a vector is nothing but its columns multiplied by the corresponding entry in the vector. So if it is the first column, it is multiplied by the first entry of the vector x1, second column gets multiplied by x2, third column gets multiplied by x3, and all these are getting added up to give the final vector, to give the resultant vector. Okay. So suddenly I change the problem a bit actually. So the problem was first scaling the first problem. When I look at it, when I was looking at it from this direction, that this first entry is basically a scaling of each of these coordinates and adding them up. That way I was able to look at it. Then the scaling was happening on the parent vector, and the scalars were these in the first row of the matrix. Now I have reversed the problem. Now the scaling, you see, the scaling is happening on the first column of the matrix, and the scalar is x1. So the scalar is in this axis x1, whatever the x1 is here, the scalar is this much, and the vector which is getting scaled is the first column of the matrix, operating matrix. If you give any operating matrix, it will have several columns. So for an n cross n matrix, it will have n number of columns, and we will always have n number of columns if we have an n dimensional space, because my matrix is R cross C, means the C must be equals to this n, right. So order of C, which is the number of columns, will always be equal to the number of elements in the vector or the dimension of the vector, right. So you see, number of columns and number of scalars are always same, x1, x2, x3, x4, x5. So how we are posing this problem now? Now we are posing this problem like operation of a matrix on a vector is basically scaling the columns of the matrix with the coordinates of the vector on which it is getting operated. So that is how we can look at this problem now. Okay, so these are basically nothing but one vector, and this vector is some vector here. So let me try to draw. So this is a fifth order example. Just shrink your imagination to second order. So for second order, we would have some vector here multiplied by x1 plus some vector here multiplied by x2, and both these vectors would be a 2 cross 1 vector. That means maybe one of the columns is this, the first column C1, which is again a vector, right now. So C1 is also a vector. The first column is a 2 cross 1 vector, and that vector will of course be in the R2 space. It will be in the R2 space. And another vector is also there, which is the C2. Suppose C2 may be like this when you draw it. So if this is C1, your C1 may be like this is maybe minus 1 plus 1, C2 may be minus 1 minus 1 or something like that. So these two may be the columns. So these two are the columns now. And now what happens, I am simply scaling these columns up with the x1 and x2. So if my parent vector is this, which is suppose these both are 1 almost, so 1, and this is like 2 maybe. Okay, so I am scaling this vector c1 vector by how much? C1 vector I am scaling by this much, the coordinate in the x1, the coordinate of this my parent vector. So let me call this the first vector x. So x, for x, my x1 is equals to 1 and x2 is equals to 2. So I am scaling the c1. So the matrix is, so my operation is basically this. Let me write it down so that you get an understanding. So c1, c2, these are the columns of the matrix getting multiplied with x1, x2, which is the vector. And my question is, what is this final vector? So this c1 is basically, c1 is basically, here what we are assuming it is like -1, 1, and the other one is -1, -1. c2 is -1, -1. x1, x2 is what? x1, x2, x1 is 1, x2 is 2. You can readily calculate this. So I am not doing the algebra, I am trying to show you the geometry. So the algebra is there, you can always do the algebra, but you must always have the picture of what this operation that we are doing is actually trying to say in this vector space. So here you can readily do this. However, I will do it in a different way with the understanding of the column vectors now. So the column vector number 1 is getting scaled up by x1. So x1 amount is 1. So it is remaining like this, c1. What is the column vector? What is the scaling for the column vector number 2? Which is, it is 2. So as we have understood the concept of scaling from the last lecture, scaling is nothing but extending its length by the scaling amount. So we are making the length twice, and for that both the coordinates of the vector are getting increased by the same scale. So it was 1 1, so now it become 2 2 basically, -2 -2. But the for the picture wise, what we have now the final vectors, this one and this one, which need to be added to get the result. The final result is this c1 into x1, c2 into x2, correct? So the final result is this. So numerically you can calculate it. Geometrically, what would be the result? The summation of these two vectors. So that this diagonal, that would be the final answer. So you can understand what has been done now. So from this particular vector, on this particular vector we applied the matrix which had columns c1 and c2, and c1 and c2 are also vectors in this same space. So you can see it in two different manners. One way is to see the rows of the matrix and understand the scaling on x1 and understand the scaling on x1 and x2 in order to get the final vector. That is one way of understanding. Another way of understanding is, you from x1 and x2 you get the scaling on the columns of the matrix, operating matrix, and then you add them up in order to get the final vector. Both these understanding are important, and both this will reveal some important knowledge and idea about matrix operations as we keep on doing them. So with these ideas, now we can actually go ahead a bit. So let us move ahead. And yesterday what we saw, we saw the operation of an n cross n matrix on an n cross 1 vector. So that was almost like our similarity transformation. What we did the similarity transformation as x equals to pz. So there your p was n cross n matrix, z is also n cross 1, x is also n cross 1. So from our x space we were moving to z space, and for that purpose, for the similarity transformation, this p needed to be invertible. If p is not invertible, the one-to-one relationship will not hold. Okay. However, if p is not invertible, then you can start from any z and go to x. That is possible. But from the same x, you will not be able to go back to p, because z will be equals to p inverse x, and if p is not invertible, this will not be existing. So your operation will not be both ways. So for both way operation, your p need to be invertible. This was the case which we discussed. So there what we saw that which we discussed and which we right now also discussed here. So we were simply multiplying a vector with a matrix of the same order, a square matrix of the same order. Here also we are doing something like that only. So you can understand the picture, what is happening in this particular case. In this particular case, you are in some in a vector space. The vector space remains the same actually. So the vector space is still R2. So you are not going anywhere else, you are still remaining at R2, but you are changing the definition of the states. The states, when you are in x1, the states were independent in the manner that they were lying on the orthogonal axis x1 and x2. The state values were lying on these two axes x1 and x2. Now they will actually lie on some other axis, not x1 and x2. It will change. So it will change to z1 and z2, and this z1 and z2 combined way will give me this vector actually z. Where is z1 and z2? So x1 and x2 combined was giving me this x vector, right? Now this x1 is getting converted to some z1, x2 is getting converted to some z2. Both that z1 and z2 are still lying on this R2 plane. They combinedly will give me this vector z, which is corresponding to this vector x. This much at least you should understand, that this vector z in the z1 z2 axis corresponds to this vector x in the x1 x2 axis, because they are related through the similarity transformation. I am considering the matrix to be full rank, matrix to be invertible. All these are same idea. Matrix to be invertible, matrix determinant is non-zero, matrix is full rank, matrix columns are independent. All these are same idea. So we will also talk about rank, independence of vectors. All these ideas we will also try to cover. So anyways, but at least you are able to understand that when you operate this vector x, and this x can be any vector, so we have taken this particular one, so this particular one is coming to this particular one with this matrix being operated on it, and this matrix is an invertible matrix. You can check the determinant, it will be non-zero, and thereby with the help of the same type of matrix, you can, wherever your x was, you will be able to get a z, corresponding z. That corresponding z, now what I am trying to say is this, that corresponding z, is having its axis as z1 and z2, not these x1 and x2 like this. So x1 x2 axis is how, x1 axis is like this, which is having its values increasing in the positive direction right, and x2 is this axis which is increasing its values in the positive direction upwards. In this manner they are increasing their values, and they are orthogonal to each other, that means they are 90-degree apart. What about z1 and z2? So if any vector x is transformed into the vector z, then this particular vector x1, which is simply the x1 axis, this is also a vector in the x state space. This x2 is also a vector in the x state space. So we can take this vector x1 and apply the transformation in order to see what my z1 would be, because this x1 would basically give me the z1, x2 would give me the z2. So let us see what would be it, what they would be for this particular example. Let us see. So my example in our state space is based on these axes, x1 equals to which is 0 here, x2 is 0, right? X1 can be any value, let us choose it as 1, x2 is 0 1. This is the basic one, and if you need some other value than 1 here, you can simply scale this. So this would be simply scaled, so it will be elongated or shortened, but the direction of the vector will remain the same, and we are concerned about the direction only. So if it is scaled by alpha, whatever transformation you apply and the vector you will get, that vector will also get scaled by alpha. So we are not bothered about the alpha, we are taking the normalized vector. So normalized vector is like this, where we are dealing with unities. So this is 1. Okay, what would be z1? So z1 would be simply minus 1 minus 1 1 minus 1 of 1 0 x1. What is this? Now you can do the you have all the geometrical knowledge, you can apply the geometry. However, you can simply now do the algebraic operation and keep the geometric knowledge at the back of your mind. So you know that you are now transforming the x1 axis somewhere in this same plane. Where is it actually going? So it is going to minus 1 0, z2 minus 1 minus 1 1 minus 1 0 1. This is going to minus did we do it correctly? Let me see. Minus 1 1, so not 0, sorry. Minus 1 1, and this one minus 1 minus 1 minus 1 minus 1. So let me again draw the space, draw the two-dimensional space. This is R2, and here my x1 x2 were. So in terms of these perpendicular axes which we are so familiar with, what would be my z1 and z2? My z1 would be here 1 minus 1. So let me draw it by red. 1 minus 1. So this point. So this is my z1 basically. So I have simply obtained the direction with this, and it can be scaled. So it can go on to any value. So this is the z1 axis. Okay, this is the z1 axis. What is the z2 axis? Z2 axis is minus 1 minus 1 minus 1 minus 1. So like this, z1 and z2. So in terms of this z1 and z2, what we had obtained here is this axis, is this z, which is the transformation on this x. We have got this particular vector z. So this z can be expressed in terms of z1 and z2. Would you agree or not? Because the x we are able to express in terms of x1 and x2, of course, and x1 leads to z1, x2 leads to z2. So and x leads to z1, x leads to this z. This is the z. So of course z, we must be able to express z in terms of z1 and z2. I ask you to do this exercise. So you know z1, z2, you also know z. Z you have calculated. I guess z you have already calculated. No, we have only seen the geometric picture. We have not calculated it. We can readily calculate, so no problem. So z will be minus 1 minus 2, which is minus 3, 1, and minus 2, which is minus. So you try to express this minus 3 minus 1 in terms of z1 and z2. So this minus this z will be some alpha 1 z1 plus alpha 2 z2. Try to find out what this alpha 1 and alpha 2 will be. Then your job is done. And you will always be able to find this out. So you try, this is very simple. You can simply look at it and get the answer. But the point is, the point that I want to make now is basically this. So if we have two, so incidentally these z1 and z2 are also orthogonal. Incidentally, z1 and z2 are also orthogonal. You can see from the geometry. How to check orthogonality with the help of algebra, that I will talk about, because always you will not be able to draw a picture. We can only draw a picture when we are in the two-dimensional space, or maybe in the three-dimensional space at most. But that picture has to be extended in our imagination when we are dealing with higher dimensional spaces, and we must have some computational way in order to discover the geometrical properties. So that is what this algebra is giving us. So what is the way of understanding whether two vectors are orthogonal or not? We simply take the transpose of one vector and do a dot product with the other vector. If this result is 0, then they are orthogonal. This is the check, and this is an if and only if check. That means if this happens, then they are orthogonal. If the vectors have to be orthogonal, they have to satisfy this condition. Otherwise, they are not orthogonal. So you can check very easily that z1 transpose z2 will give you 0, because z1 transpose it is this, z2 is this. What we are getting, minus 1 is plus 1, plus 1 minus 1 is minus 1, which is 0. We are getting this. This happened incidentally, and it's good that it happened, because I also stressed about the how to understand what orthogonal, how we can check orthogonal vectors. So if you are given any orthogonal vector, any two vectors, suppose you are given any two vectors, let they be in any dimension. These are two-dimensional vectors. You could be given three-dimensional vectors, four-dimensional vectors, five-dimensional vectors, but both these vectors should be the same dimension. That is one thing. Otherwise, you will not be able to do this dot product. That I hope you understand from your basic knowledge about vectors, transpose, all these things, and dot product, all these things. So you will not be able to do this dot product unless these two vectors are of the same dimension. That means they are coming from the same vector space. So this is one important thing, that we are checking orthogonality of vectors only when we are looking at vectors from the same vector space. Otherwise, there is no concept of checking orthogonality. Suppose I am having a vector from R2 and another vector somewhere else in another vector space, R10 or something else. So we need not check the orthogonality. The concept is lost there. So for any two vectors in a particular vector space, we can always check whether they are orthogonal or not. However, the condition that we are interested in, so that we can call two vectors as the basis of a vector space. Now I am using another term called the basis. As the basis of a vector space, the condition we are interested in is not orthogonality as such, but independence of the vectors. Orthogonality implies independence. However, independence does not always imply orthogonality. So orthogonality is a stronger condition. Stronger, why? We need to have this stringent condition. Independence is not so strict. I will show you example. Suppose I take this vector and this vector. Of course, they are not orthogonal. I don't have to tell you that they are not orthogonal. You can see it from the geometry. However, these two vectors are independent to each other. Independent to each other. When can I call two vectors independent to each other? Suppose this is a vector v1 and this is a vector v2. If v1 cannot be expressed as a scalar of v2, as a scalar multiple of v2, then these two vectors are independent of each other. This is very simple to understand. They are independent. Okay. Because we are not able to express one in terms of other. That's why one is independent of the other, and the other is also independent of the former. So both are independent of each other. The concept requires some detailed understanding when we are talking about independence of more than two number of vectors. More than two number of vectors. So suppose I have a third vector v3 here. Then I can ask you the question whether v3 is independent of v1 and v2. Of course, you can say that v3 is independent of v1. True. v3 is independent of v2. True. But are all these three taken together form a set of independent vectors? Set of independent vectors. That means that set will contain vectors which are independent of each other. So this independent of each other, when we have more than two vectors, needs some deeper understanding. Then this independence is characterized like this. So v3 will be independent if we cannot express it as alpha 1 v2 v1 plus alpha 2 v2. If this is not equals to alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 for if this is equal for any alpha 1 alpha 2 that you can find, then it will not remain independent. It must not be equal to alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 for any alpha 1 alpha 2 combination. For any alpha 1 alpha 2 combination, it must always remain unequal. Then only we can say that v3 will be independent of independent of v1 and v2. But you know this, that if we have a vector in the same plane as the other two vector, you can always, so this is having some x1 and some x2 coordinate, this is having some x1, this is having some x1, this is having some x2, this is having some x2. Always you can express this particular x1 in terms of the x1 of v1 and v2. Always you can express this x2 of v3 in terms of x2 of v1 and x2 of v2. Always you can do that. Simply you have two numbers and you are trying to form another number. You have to scale and add in some way, and you can always do that. So if you are having more than two vectors in the same plane, this is a plane. If you have more than two vectors in the same plane, they will not form an independent set. They will never form an independent set. Using the same argument, suppose this v3 comes outside this plane. Suppose this v3 comes outside this plane, this x1 x2 plane. Suppose it is the x3 axis which is orthogonal to x1 and x2. Then of course v3, v1 and v2 will form an independent set, because in no combination of v1 and v2 you will be able to escape this plane x1 x2. This R2 plane you will not be able to escape for any linear combination of v1 and v2. You will not be able to escape the R2 plane, but your v3 is lying outside the R2 plane. So of course your v3 will be then independent of v1 and v2 in that case. However, if we take another vector v4 which is also outside the x1 x2 plane, then that v4 vector will not be independent of v1 v2 v3 together, because using v1 v2 v3 having v3 being outside the x1 x2 plane, you will now be able to create any vector which is in the three-dimensional space. So using three independent vectors, you will be able to create any vector in the three-dimensional space. So the fourth vector will not be independent. So now we are having several concepts we have touched upon. We will try to formally define them. We will try to formally define these things: independent vectors and creation of vectors, which is basically giving us the idea of basis. How we ascertain whether some given vectors are independent or not? We can come to the conclusion from these equations. Basically, suppose we are looking at this equation. So this equation can also, so what we are trying to say here, that v3 must not be equal to alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 for any value of alpha 1 and alpha 2. We can rewrite this in a general manner like this: alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 plus alpha 3 v3 equals to 0 should not be satisfied by any non-zero alpha 1 alpha 2 alpha 3, by any non-zero alpha 2 alpha 1 alpha 2 alpha 3. If it is satisfied by some non-zero alpha, that basically means v3 is equals to alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2. Then you can divide by alpha 3, considering alpha 3 as 1, v3 again becomes equals to minus alpha 1 v1 plus minus alpha 2 v2. So for some non-zero alpha 1 alpha 2, you are able to get v3, which is a linear combination of v1 and v2. You should not be able to get that. That means this particular equation should only be satisfied by 0 alpha. So all these alphas must be 0. So in order to satisfy this equation, only then we can say that these v1, v2, v3 are independent vectors. If you can obtain some non-zero alpha, then this would be dependent set of vectors. This is the understanding. For n number of vectors that I may have given you to check, so you should check that summation alpha I vi for I equals to 1 to n equals to 0 is possible. So equals to 0 for only for alpha I equals to 0, all alpha I equals to 0. Then only you can say that your vi, so v1 to vn are an independent set of vectors. So this is the story about independent vectors. Let us look back into this situation. What was this? This was multiplying the parent vector with the matrix. And getting some result. Correct? Getting some result. Now, okay, let us we will touch this concept in the next lecture, because this will give us some other concept. Actually, let us look at the basis. What is a basis? Basis is basically a set of independent vectors with the help of which we would be able to create any other vector in the said vector space. So suppose we are considering the R2 space. So here v1 and v2 was a set of bases because they are independent vectors, and with the help of these two vectors we would be able to create any other vector lying on the R2 space. Similarly, x1 x2 was also a basis. They were orthogonal bases. z1 z2 were also an orthogonal basis. But for being a basis, orthogonality is not a requirement. For being a basis, only independence is the requirement. They must be independent of each other. Because suppose it is very obvious that if v1 and v2 are not independent, that means one is a scalar of another, then no matter how you scale and add, they will only give you vectors in the same direction. You will not be able to cover any other place other than that particular line segment, right? So suppose your v1 is certain alpha times v2, then v1 will be in the same direction, and adding v1 and v2 in whatever manner will give you vectors in the same direction. So you will not be able to come out of that dimension. I'm using another word now. You will not be able to come out of that dimension. So we will be confined to that single dimension and will not be able to cover the entire entire two-dimensional state space. So to cover the two-dimensional state space, you would have to need two independent vectors in that space, and they can form the basis vector. Similarly, v3 v1 is a set of basis vector, but v3 v1 v2 is not a set of basis vectors because they are firstly not independent. Only independent vectors can form a set of basis vectors. But now there is a catch. Suppose that thing I was saying, that this v3 is outside this x1 x2 plane. v3 is outside the r2 plane in the r3 vector space, three-dimensional space. Then v1 v2 is a set of independent vectors but not a basis of r3 space. v1 v2 is not a basis of r3 space. They are a basis of the R2 space, which is this one, this R2 space, not a basis of the R3 space. V3 V1 will be a basis of another R2 space, not this same R2 space. I hope you can understand this. V3 is outside this x1 x2 plane. Suppose v3 is x3. Suppose v3 is x3, which is the orthogonal vector coming out perpendicularly from this particular point, coming out perpendicularly from the plane of the screen. So that v3 and v1 will form a plane, an R2 plane. That v3 and this v2 will form another R2 plane, a different R2 plane. This v1 and v2 is forming another R2 plane, a different one. So all these together, all these pairs of vector will form basis of different R2 planes. Together, if they are taken together, v1, v2, v3, then they form the basis of the R3 space, vector space. Then they form the basis of the R3 vector space. So v1, v2, though they are independent, does not form a basis of the R3 vector space. v3, v1, though they are independent, does not form the basis of the R3 vector space. Same for v3 and v2. v1, v2 pair, v1, v3 pair, v2, v3 pair are independent as well as forming basis of some R2 vector space, and all different R2 vector space. So I hope you understand the difference between independent vectors and basis. One thing you would note, that the number of basis vectors define the dimension of the vector space. If you are taking only two independent vectors and saying that they are basis of a vector space, then that vector space is of course two-dimensional. If you are taking three independent vectors and saying that they form the basis of a vector space, then they are of course forming a three-dimensional vector space. That is the idea of two-dimensional, that is the idea of basis and dimension of the vector space. With this idea, we can pose a different problem. Previously, when we are doing this operation m into x, matrix and a vector, we were supposing that m is n cross n, x is n cross 1. But do we need m to be n cross n all the time? In order to do the mx operation algebraically, we don't need it, right? So let us suppose for now that M is M cross N. This is required. So this last number should match with this number. So now you will be able to get vectors V, which is M cross 1. What happened? What just happened? What just happened is this, that I took a vector from a n-dimensional vector space and put it in a m-dimensional vector space. This vector is coming from a m-dimensional vector space. This vector is coming from a n-dimensional vector space. So this is what is happening. So maybe your n is, suppose n is 3, m is 2. Then you are taking a vector from the 3-dimensional space and putting it in a 2-dimensional space. Suppose n is 2, m is 3. Then you are taking a vector from a 2-dimensional vector space and putting it in a 3-dimensional vector space. So I am increasing or decreasing dimension. I am increasing or decreasing dimensions, or that, or in other words, geometrically, what I am doing, I am geometrically I am moving from a plane to a sphere, or a sphere to a plane, when we are talking about dimensions 2 and 3. It can be any dimension to any dimension. So you can imagine hyperspaces. From one hyperspace we are going to another hyperspace. There will be changes in the properties probably because of the change in the hyperspace. However, we can move from one space to another by use of such matrices which are non-square rectangular matrices. So this is how we move from one space to another space itself. We are not remaining in the same space. Previously, when we are using square matrices, we were remaining in the same vector space, or remaining in the same space, coordinate space. Now we are moving from one space to another. This is important in what manner? Suppose we are trying to project a shadow on a particular plane. So our 3-dimensional object is there, we are trying to project a shadow on the horizontal plane. Then we have to do this operation in order to get the shadow. So what it is doing? It is having a, so let me try to draw a 3-dimensional axis. And this be the vector x. I am trying to project a shadow on the x1 x2 plane. This is my shadow. So this vector is in the x1 x2 plane in the R2 space. This vector is in the R3 space. So of course you will be able to calculate some m. Some m is of course there, which will take your x to this v. What is this m? That we have to figure out, but some m could be there. And if you apply that m to any other vector, so the property of m would be this, to bring it to this vector space. This would cast a shadow. Yeah, whether this is casting a shadow perpendicularly or not, that will depend on exactly what are these values entries in m. However, it is transitioning, or it is transforming this vector from the 3-dimensional space to the 2 dimensions. I have taken this perpendicular because of our this is our reflex. Basically we cast a projection perpendicularly. However, this could be some different also. It could be a very small vector also, something like this you may get, or you may get a longer one, or you may even not even get it here, or you may get it somewhere here. That is also possible. It depends on what your aim is, what your aim matrix is. But one thing is certain, that you will come to the x1 x2 plane, you will come to the two-dimensional plane. Also you may land on the x1 x3 plane, depending on what your aim matrix entries are. You may land on this particular plane, x1 x3. But the thing remains the same, that you are coming from a three-dimensional space to a two-dimensional. Similarly, you can so similarly, if your n is 2 and m is 3, you are basically somehow you are extending from the, you are taking your vector out from the two dimension and coming to the three dimension. You are increasing the dimension. So this is what happens when you are dealing with rectangular matrices. So in our cases of control system, normally we don't encounter these particular matrices, but for your geometrical understanding I am pointing this out, and so that you have a complete picture of the geometrical happenings, what is going on between the spaces. So I have covered, I have given you an understanding of the similarity transformation, or in general any transformation. It may not be a invertible one also, but similarity transformation needs to be invertible. However, we have given you an understanding of the transformation, which is like this: a square matrix multiplied by the vector. What it is doing, it is keeping the vector in the same space, however in a different vector you are getting. Also, you are getting a different set of basis vectors. So from x1 x2 actually we got z1 z2, right? From this x1 and x2 we got z1 and z2, which are here. These basis vectors are located at these positions. Then we from this understanding we developed the understanding of orthogonal vectors, independent vectors, and basis vectors. So these are important understandings we obtained. We obtain another very important understanding, to look into the operation of matrix into a vector, not simply as the scaling of the different elements of the parent vector, but also scaling of the different columns of the matrix itself by the entries of the column vector. This is a very important understanding. So with these understandings I will end this particular lecture, otherwise this one lecture will become too much and too heavy, and I suggest that if you have not got any concept here, you please ask me in the live sessions, but only after going through this video twice or thrice maybe. These are not very difficult concepts, but very important concepts which you need to be very clear about. So you need to stay with the concept. You may not get them in one go, but you need to stay with the concept. And you can try to do some numericals by choosing these matrices and vectors and see what happens. I will not give you exact numericals. They will appear in the tutorials. You can choose your own matrices and vectors and just see, and parallelly you draw. That is what I will suggest. You first take examples from second order vectors, second order matrices, 2 cross 2 matrices, remain in the x1 x2 plane. Draw the vectors, whatever example you are doing, you draw the vectors. You will get a very clear understanding. of what is happening. Then if you are comfortable in drawing a three-dimensional space like this on a two-dimensional board or two-dimensional paper, try to draw this also, one or two very simple matrices. Don't choose complex matrices. Restrict yourself with zeros and ones and perhaps two, maybe maximum 0 1 2, these elements minus 1, like that, and try to draw. When you try to draw, you will get the understanding. Then you will obtain the understanding, you will be very clear about it. And these are some understanding how to check orthogonality and independence of vectors. Orthogonality and independence of vectors, this is algebraic check. What is the geometrical check of orthogonality? Angle between them is 90 degree. What is the geometrical check of independence? One vector should not lie over another. If we have a third vector, that third vector should not lie, that third vector should not be we should not be able to construct that third vector with the help of this linear combination of the first two vectors. And in this way it extends, it keeps on increasing till n number of vectors. And if we have independent vectors, they form a basis. So as many independent vectors you choose, you get that dimensional space. You cannot create a higher dimensional space with lower number of independent vectors. With these understanding, I will end the lecture here, and I ask you to do those exercises. Just choose some matrices and choose some vectors, draw them on your pen and paper, and you will gain the understanding very well. Thank you for your patience, and I hope something have went into your head with this lecture. And as you look at the mathematics, I'm sure you will be able to understand more. And in the next lecture, I guess what I have here in my notes. So yeah, these I have already covered: independent orthogonal basis, column space. So in the next lecture, there are few other ideas about rank, range, and nullity of a matrix, and those ideas will be taken up, and we will dive straight into how these ideas reflect when we are dealing with control system analysis and design. So in our control system, we know that we are dealing with that x dot equals to ax plus bu, that is the state dynamics. So we are dealing with that. So how this reflects, these ideas reflect there, and what they tell us about the system, that we would start understanding. So with this I end the lecture. Thank you for your attention.